Hello, everybody. We're back once again, and we're getting serious this time. So, last night I watched this documentary called Kurt Cobain Montage of Heck. It's a pretty great overview and creatively filmed as well. It's all of Kurt Cobain's life and the formation of Nirvana. And whilst I was watching it, a pretty deep insight infiltrated my mind. And it's basically, there's a point in the documentary where they start talking about Kurt's chronic stomach issues. So if you don't know, actually, I think for the majority of his later life, I think like the last 7 years of his life, he suffered almost constantly with extreme stomach pain that stopped him from eating, it debilitated him, weakened him. Even in the last few videos of him, he seems so skinny. And what's really interesting is the way he recontextualizes it. They ask him, I swear in the documentary they ask him, would you trade your life now with stomach issues for a life without stomach issues, but make it more normal and boring, basically? And he replies, I actually wouldn't have my stomach issues fixed, because he feels that is sort of the catalyst that inspires him to keep making music, and keep performing, and keep pushing forward. And he also says how it actually makes his music deeper, because he's actually channeling that pain into something creative. He's actually like transmuting his pain into an expression of love, and that's what keeps him going. And it really just reminded me about all the shit I'm going through at the minute. Like, I've been suffering a lot like these past few weeks, but I've now come out of it, and I feel amazing. I feel better than I have done in years, to be honest. My mind is clear, my body feels great. I just feel really grounded and in tune with reality. I don't have dark thoughts. I was having loads of dark thoughts a few months ago, like of the suffering of the world and getting bogged down by it. And I think a lot of people do, don't they? Because I guess it's everywhere, it's hard to avoid. It's in the news, it's in our personal lives. We hear of our mates, the celebrities, and everybody going through periods of suffering. And now I feel like I'm really starting to come to an understanding of the role of suffering and pain in life. Because obviously this is probably one of the biggest struggles of all time, isn't it, for humans? We as humans, what is the number one prime directive of humans? I guess it's to seek pleasure and avoid suffering. And actually, this sort of mindset produces even more suffering, because the overall role of pain. And also, before I say this, don't take my word as gospel, please. This is just my perspective, my insights. You can also come to these insights as well through contemplation and psychedelics, meditation, and just generally connecting with life and experiencing suffering yourself and trying to look at it from a meta perspective. So yeah, don't take this. It's not the Bible, children. So my perspective on it is that the role of suffering in life is actually to catalyze your growth. And the reason suffering exists, why, not only just because the reality is infinite and it has to include absolutely every duality, and there's no way that reality could function if it was all just goodness, because it would just be static and there would be no point to experiencing this reality that we have if it didn't have some contrast to it. Or, as the famous saying goes, you can't have life without dark. But to get even deeper than that, if you look in your own life, and personally in my own life, every single time I've gone through deep suffering, be it physical or emotional or a combination of the two, it actually is a catalyst for change. And every single time I've gone through major pain, like I talk in the video where I broke up with my ex-girlfriend 5 years ago, and it was unbelievably traumatic experience, and then I had my ego death running around Manchester naked, which was absolutely fucked up. I genuinely would not pass up on that experience, even though it's horrible. And in the moment, yeah, you're like, oh, this feels horrible, because suffering is not supposed to feel good, is it? Pain, otherwise it wouldn't be pain. But there's a deeper. What's so cool about, say, the yin and yang symbol, I think, is that it's such a perfect encapsulation of the experience of life and the journey. You've got the light and the dark, and there's aspects of light within the dark. So within that pain that I've experienced, it's actually sowing the seeds for the deepest change. So after all I went through, my girlfriend and her heroin addiction and my drug use and just insane ego death experiences that I didn't handle well at first, it really ended up sort of coalescing after a few years into the deepest change I've ever had. It completely grew my personality. I started being more extroverted. I started opening myself up more to people, becoming more emotional, more in tune with life. I also had a spark to understand reality and psychedelics after I'd gone through these experiences. And 5 years down the line, like, I've grown so much as a person thanks to these bouts of suffering. And recently what I've been going through, I'm not going to go into it yet. I'll probably talk about what I'm going through at a later date. I don't think I'm ready to talk about it just yet. But I've now fully processed everything I'm going through. And obviously it was hard, and I cried and I suffered, and I had sleepless nights. But I'm genuinely thankful that I went through all that and came out the other end, because having that awful experience and then contrasting it with then the awakening that comes afterwards is just the most beautiful thing in the world, because it really does feel like pain is a mechanism to wake you up to your higher potential. Every single time, I mean, the stuff that I've gone through recently, the pain that I've experienced in the context of the situation, it really feels like the pain was amplifying a new chapter of my life to come to fruition. It feels like the pain wakes you up from the darkness, from the unconsciousness, and into the true light of consciousness, or what can be called enlightenment. And without that pain, the pathway to that can't be found, because we as humans we're stuck on we're sort of like stuck on a baseline for the most part. We're always stuck in this homeostasis. We don't want to change, even though deep down subconsciously we know that change is actually is something that will deepen us. It's risky, obviously. Change and unknown, change and the unknown is scary for humans, because we like to be in our comfort zone. But actually, that's the thing that is stagnating your growth and making you more depressed, which is hilarious in a way, because the ego is just tethering you to the same things you know all the time. But realistically, when you push yourself and you actually are open to the experience of maybe suffering through these experiences, and you channel it and feel into it, not try to distract yourself with like drugs or any distraction really. If you feel into it and embrace it, you actually come out of the end a deeper character. That's what it all is. It's just like character building. And obviously I know a lot of people will comment and be like this, yes, but this doesn't explain all the serial killers and genocide and suffering of mankind. It's like, yeah, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. What I'm talking about is the role of suffering within your life, not the meta like context of the earth, which I'll probably go into another point. I like to talk more about like suffering and evil and the nature of it. But just in this one, talking about you've got to embrace pain in your life. You've got to embrace the expansion. Your whole life, your consciousness, it's always desiring to expand. But each time you try to, you will experience some pain. And it's actually a necessary part of that development. So, in order to grow, I've realised that you need to forgive pain and accept it. And if you can do this, you will awaken to deeper aspects of yourself and reality in the universe. And you will start to see the meta element of pain as a completely necessary, 100% necessary aspect of life. And it gets dark, it gets scary, it gets twisted, but that's all just a test for your consciousness. Can you accept it? Can you forgive it? And can you use it to grow you? And Kurt Cobain talking about how his stomach pain, how he actually appreciated it in a sense, even though it was debilitating and completely destroyed his enjoyment of normal life. It was actually the greatest. It was the biggest fuel to the fire that was his passion for music and art and creativity, which is just fascinating, isn't it? And you look at this for all artists, all visionaries, they all go through some serious bouts of pain or suffering. You look at the childhood, neglect, lack of love, and then they search through that pain, they then search for love in deeper avenues. And that's how some of the greatest art in the world is created. If any of you ever seen Evangelion, the anime, one of the deepest, the anime is in itself, it unfortunately suffers with, I think, shallow writing for the most part. But then you find them golden titles like Evangelion that flip everything on its head. It deconstructs the medium, and it also is a massive message for how someone's suffering can be the gateway to deeper and deeper expressions of love and art and creativity, because obviously that's what it was. It was a labour of love produced through Hideaki Anno's depression. And it's everywhere. You can see this throughout all of life, and all of the greatest TV shows, all the greatest movies, a lot of them deal with these painful scenarios and bleak worlds, bleak characters, but a bit like Berserk. There's always that element of hope and perseverance to them, and it really reflects perfectly the journey of life, your own personal life. Yeah, try not to get too bogged down about like stuff that's quote unquote external, because I guess external and internal are, can mold into one if you take enough psychedelics or get conscious enough. But just talking like relatively speaking, yeah, don't get too bogged down about what's going on in the world. Obviously take an interest in it and process it, but don't let it get you down too much. Think about how in your life the suffering you've gone through is probably, if you try and eliminate your because obviously your ego will tamper with it and it'll be like, nah, all that suffering, it was real and it was horrible and I'm a victim and etc. Which I do understand. I completely understand why people think that, because I've thought that, and for these past few weeks I've gone through them bouts of thoughts in that regard. But at the end of the day, it will be, suffering is what will set you free. I think someone said that suffering is the second greatest teacher in life. The first greatest teacher is love, but the only way to get to that love is to experience the suffering, to amplify the love and basically encapsulate what it is to be alive, is to experience and feel deeper and deeper levels of love. But to do that, you have to combine the dualities of life, really, I believe. So yeah, if you're suffering at the minute, going through some shit like I've been, just take a step back sometimes when you're suffering. And I know you still will suffer, you still will feel the pain, but try and just take a step back and see the bigger picture of what you're going through and how you can use this energy and transmute it into making a great life for yourself. So yeah, I just thought I'd whip out some words of wisdom, activating some Kim. Yeah, so hopefully you found this interesting, and if not, then I'll never do it again. So sound in a bit.